Blog Talk Radio.
What I've left behind, feel once again. I'm locked up in memories, they all intertwine. The memories in my mind. I know tomorrow, 'cause that dawn will come. You will never know just what you have done.
Good evening, everybody. This is Annie Margis for National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. And this is the SCAN radio show, Stop Child Abuse Now, radio show number 3187. And I'm going to begin by reading the mission statement of the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. We have a single purpose at Naasca: to address issues related to child abuse and trauma, including sexual assault, violent or physical abuse, emotional traumas, and neglect. And we do so with only two goals. One, educating the public, especially as related to helping society get over its taboo of discussing childhood sexual abuse, CSA. Presenting facts showing child abuse to be a pandemic, worldwide problem that affects everyone. 2, offering hope and healing through numerous paths, providing many services to adult survivors of child abuse and information for anyone interested in the many issues involving prevention, intervention, and discovery. And this is SCAN Radio Show number 3187. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we do a call-in discussion with a survivor professional using an open mic forum. We feature a survivor professional show host who fields topics brought to the episode by you, the listener. Tonight, the special co-host is Pastor Deborah, who grew up all over the world in a military family where her mother was mentally ill. She is now a survivor professional living in Pensacola, Florida. She's trained in ministry, mental health, working with substance abuse, and is a trauma-informed social worker, all in one. She volunteers with many community organizations. Pastor Deborah says she can, quote, minister by text, phone, Skype, in person, and however the Lord directs her 24/7, unquote. She teaches that humans have 3 parts, being of spirit, soul, and the physical body, and believes that all 3 are important and that each area needs care. We look forward to Pastor Deborah being an active member of the Naasca family for a long time. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Pastor Deborah.
Hello, everybody. Pastor Deborah here. And Philip, are you still on the line?
I'm still here, Deborah.
All right. I want to welcome everybody. I don't know about you guys, your weather, but we've had a lot of storms today. They're gone for now. And we're on the Gulf Coast down here by New Orleans and Mobile, so it gets kind of summery real quick. But the topic I wanted to sort of talk about, which is I kind of think is important, is the event of child abuse, as we know, with adults has already happened. And there's a lot of issues with that. And what I think is important for adults is to always keep healing there in the forefront, that asking questions about what it is, how do I get there, if I'm on the right track, what will healing look like, if I do certain things, what does it mean to be healed from the memories, the triggers, the event of childhood sexual abuse. So I'm open to any kind of questions you have. We can talk on mental health if you want to. We can talk on current events. We can talk deep stuff if you want to. I'll leave that up to the callers or Annie or to ask questions. So glad
Thank
to be
you,
here.
Pastor Deborah. Let me give the phone number out for callers. If you're interested in talking to Pastor Deborah, asking questions, making comments, or just talking about your story, please call in 646-595-2118. Again, that's 646-595-2118. And we have Philip on the line already, Pastor Deborah. Philip, do you have any questions or comments so far?
Well, I guess we talk about mental health. That's okay with everybody.
Okay. What do you want to know about mental health and child abuse or healing? Or you have a specific question?
What is vital to mental health, to good mental health?
What is vital, or what?
Yes, what is vital to having good mental health?
Vital to mental health?
Yes.
Okay. We'll say in normal children, okay, when they're developing, there's a brain in there. Actually, a wonderful book to read to understand it. It's called The Three-Pronged Universe. And it has to grow, and it develops all its neurons and the electrical system, and, everything is getting connected. When that gets interrupted, or we'll call it something happens due to child abuse, and once you study child abuse biologically, and you understand neural electrical connections and the storage of memories and what happens when the physical body is being, we'll say, receiving pain. But in sexual abuse, it receives pain and pleasure. So there's hormones going off that shouldn't be going off. There are nerve endings that are being stimulated that shouldn't be stimulated. So things in a normal growth for the brain that will produce the thoughts and the concepts, the images, the memories, what we would call mental health, set of beliefs, gets disturbed. You would call it perverted, releases hormones, sugar, adrenaline before its time, and we'll say certain sexual hormones that are supposed to be released at the proper time after get turned on early. So things are out of balance. They are not in their normal flow. And what happens in our brain in mental health is we associate, as you know, if you smell something that goes up your nose into your brain, we make a connection with our five senses to events. And sometimes, as an adult, you might smell something that you had if you have a trauma event as a child, you get connected in your brain through the memory. It's if you ever watched how it works, it's neural electrical. It's electricity going through all the neurons and the thing, and there's blood up there that's carrying it. So it gets disturbed. So the normal, what we would call mental health of a child, which includes nurturing from a parent, feeling safe and secure, feeling cuddled and loved, and normal growth patterns through normal events are disturbed. And if there's any kind of, we'll say, head trauma or anything, you have physically damaged the brain. So things that should not have happened biologically happened. Also, at the same time, if words are said to the child, or if there's smells of perfume or cologne or lights or music, it's all coming through the senses, and it's stored in memory. Now, we don't have all the memories, as you know. Most of us can't remember ourselves at 1 or 2 or 3 in all the events of our life. They're sort of short-term, and that's when you study mental health, you study long-term memory, and you study short-term memory. And so what happens is our brain is a wonderful biological organ that has lots of different chemicals in it, electricity. It's connected to the 5 senses. There's nerves in it. There's water. There's blood. So health, a lot of counselors don't really study that. They, child development is real important to study. Okay, now that gets disrupted. Okay, and then the child is physically growing. The brain is still growing, but you start seeing now what happens at home. What the culture is will affect the brain. If some event happens, children want to please the adults and be obedient, and if they're told to be silent, don't tell, this is our secret, they will do that. But there's something in each of us that knows this is not right. Okay? I know my mommy can touch me and wipe my fanny and give me a bath, and she doesn't do things to me, or my father doesn't do that. And sex abuse to most children is a foreign thing, so it brings confusion. And from those adults, or even a brother or sister, the child's original thing is, I'm to be loved, I'm in a family, they're to protect me, and not abuse. That children don't have the term abuse, but there's something in them, and that gets destroyed. Pastorally or spiritually, we're taught that love is the anchor of the soul. The soul's the mental health part, and if that soul, with all of its feelings and memories, does not get anchored in true love that does not hurt, then it's like just blowing in the wind. So mental health then, for we'll say a normal adult, should be somebody who did not have child abuse, or if they did, they got healed, and they can weather the storms of life. They're up and they're down. There's good days and bad days. They can deal with death. They can deal with the storms. They haven't had any brain deficiencies in education and learning, and that kind of thing. So mental health is, can you handle yourself, and can you, the DSM would say, if you can hold down a job, if you can make good decisions in family, sort of like be a good citizen, not break the law, not cause any problems, then you have good mental health. So there's a lot of different definitions of what is mental health. Mental, what it means is the brain, the thoughts, the biology part of the brain, because remember, psychiatrists are medical doctors first. They don't do surgery. A neuropsychologist does that. A psychiatrist understands all of the biological parts of the brain. But he's trying to figure out why you're having the thoughts, the dreams, the inner feelings, what motivates you. Why do you think that? Why do you feel that? Why aren't you? Everybody gets mad. Okay, we all get angry. Everybody has sad days, bad days. Everybody has good days. But why are you having these thoughts? Why are you depressed? There's days I'm depressed, okay? But I don't live in it. I don't stay in it. I don't try to commit suicide because I've had a bad day, okay? So all of us swing in our mental health, happy days, sad days. There's days you're depressed, but we don't stay in it. And in psychiatry, they go, oh, you're hearing voices? Oh, they would think I was mentally ill. If I told them God talks to me audibly, and he talks to me and I can hear him, they would think I'm mentally ill because I'm hearing voices inside my head. Now, the voice that's supposed to be there is your own thoughts. And you're supposed to have thoughts, and you're supposed to be thinking about things and solving problems and solving life issues and being a loving family member and taking care of your family and working. So some of these basic things you're not able to do because of child abuse, then you have mental health issues. They don't call it that nowadays. They just have some mental issues because there's a big stigma that they don't want to be called crazy because that means you got to go to the state mental institution and, you are literally off your rocker, so to speak. So there is, to a mental health counselor, they are trained in helping you explore your feelings, help you talk about what you haven't been able to talk about to anybody. Try to figure out why it happened, but, you're only one part of the problem. You maybe haven't talked to the person who abused you. Why did they do what they did? Well, they're not in the room with you. All you're exploring is your own feelings. And then sometimes in mental health, they try to help you do guided imagery to replay that, thinking, we'll get to the truth if we can replay the event. Or if that doesn't work, we can hypnotize you, and we'll get down to that deep subconscious that you got in there, and we will relive the event so you'll have the memories, and we'll try to pull all of these different inner children and parts together so you're not disassociated anymore. But one thing they don't talk about in mental health is that you leave your body to survive, and they know that you disassociate, but they don't really know that you're forming multiple personalities, and that some PhDs do. So what is good mental health? Just to the average person, you can live your day and you don't kick people and abuse people. You don't steal, rob, break the law. You don't drink and drive. You vote. You're a good neighbor. Go to church. Go to work. Don't steal the money. Go to ball games or sports. That's what they would call good mental health. Does that answer your question, Mr. Phillips?
Yes, it does, Mrs. Deborah. Thank you.
Sure. And what happened was, we'll use back in the, I started in the 80s. Homosexuality and lesbianism used to be in the DSM as a psychological disorder because it was considered abnormal to have sex in the same sex. Okay? That wasn't normal. Normal was male and female. But the criteria, because the world, you have to study the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, comes out of the World Health Organization, which you have to study, the American Psychiatric Association, all those. And it's a form of how do you talk to insurance companies and how do you define and how do you talk to each other. And in the medical community, it's all done by numbers. Depression has a number, 501 something. Depression with short-term something. Everything has a number. And everybody knows what that, when you study it, we know what the number is. when we're diagnosing you, and you have an axis 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can have different, and when we send it off to the insurance company, okay, to get paid, there's a number there. And that tells the insurance company you have depression, whether you've had it 6 months or a year, and depression with anything else, that's axis 2. And you can have 2 or 3 things, substance abuse plus depression. And so the DSM, what happened was homosexuality was in there, and according to their criteria, the homosexual community, I guess maybe in the, 80s somewhere, they rose up and said, according to your criteria, we're holding down jobs, we're staying with the same sex, same person for 20, 30 years, we are law-abiding citizens, we don't do drugs, How can, according to your criteria, we are not mentally ill? So they took it out of the DSM. So you didn't diagnose that anymore. That was no longer a mental illness. So according to the American Psychiatric, whatever, it is changing on what is considered a mental health issue. And a lot of people just think mental health is to be happy, okay, and get through the day. But it is a little harder for those who have had sexual abuse because they've got some things that they didn't ask for, and their brain was probably, we'll say, had some deficiencies, maybe deformities, and things got turned on before they were ready, explosion of adrenaline or cortisol, sugar, stuff like that, the 5 senses working, and it affected the brain's development, but yet the thoughts, the understanding of what's going on was not there. So it gets buried away, and then it without anybody knowing, your subconscious just kind of, it's there, and it's trying to, at times, regulate, have a well-balanced brain. And so healing is, and from the mental health side, healing is to help you sort of release a lot of those feelings, sort of get to a balance through it, try to understand what's happened, and then try to come up with some different ways of thinking. And the mental health part's your soul, and to have a different way of thinking about things, and therefore you would respond differently. And you wouldn't have the responses you've had previously if you hadn't been healed. Does that help?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions, Philip?
I have a feeling I'm on the verge of another question, but I don't know what it is yet.
Do what now?
I have a feeling I'm on the verge of another question, but I don't know what it is yet.
Okay. Well, one of the things I was talking to Annie about is, the event has already happened if you're an adult. You're not a child. And in healing, hopefully when you go to a therapist, you will find out, well, what happened to my biological brain and my system? Okay? And hopefully that therapist has taken classes and studied it and can explain it to you, all the nerves, all the hormones that get turned on, and can explain to you the many different thoughts you have that you shouldn't have, and the many different levels of consciousness that you have. And one of the great movies that really helps is, you look at 3 Faces of Eve. She had a traumatic event when she was a small child, and she formed multiple personalities. Then Sybil, who had a lot of, kind of bad stuff, and how she acted. And that happens with a lot of people. Healing, according to mental health, is maybe we integrate all these different parts of you and all these fragmented memories. We recapture them, and we have everybody, if there's usually there's multiple personalities in there, everybody accepts what happens and everybody knows what happens. And they call it getting integral, and we now have every part of you that sort of has relived the events. And in mental health, they think that's getting healed. And sometimes people will be hypnotized and they will relive the event, trying to expose this subconscious stuff that they can't remember. And they think that, and a lot of therapists believe if you remember and sit in that office and you just tell all the gritty details of what happened, okay, you'll be healed. That's what they believe, because you've released the anger or the depression and you've told your secret. And, that's kind of and people don't realize, too, that people want to blame somebody. And back in the 70s, therapists were got in a lot of trouble because they were helping clients to talk about it. And they said, well, probably, and somebody would say, my dad did it or my mom allowed it. And the therapist encouraged the patient to sue, take their parents to court. And a lot of their parents rose up, got lawyers, and they formed the false memory syndrome, I think. And they said, our child is lying. We never did this. And they've always been this way. And so they fought back. And the therapists don't kind of go that way anymore, And they just try to help you deal with your feelings and your thoughts and memories about the event. I don't know if they consider that healing or not, or if it's therapeutic. Therapeutic means it produces healing. And but healing now needs to be on everybody's mind. The events have happened. You're an adult now. And some people, they just kind of stuff it away, close the door, and that's the end of it. We're not going to talk about it. I'm going on with life. Okay, that happens. Other people can't do that, and they want to tell everybody about it. And some of them people write books, so, they make movies out of it, and so trying to help a lot of different avenues to healing. So, Annie, have you got any questions for me?
I have a comment. My comment is that I was in a self-help peer-to-peer group for many years, and listening to other people normalized being a victim. I wasn't the only one anymore, and I kept hearing my same story coming out of other people's mouths, and I found that really, really healing. It took years, but now today I have to say I'm pretty healed. That's not the only thing I did, but I think that's the most important one.
Okay. Well, it is for somebody who hasn't talked, and to tell their story is important. Peer-to-peer is really good because those people have had it happen to them and they understand that. A lot of therapists never had sexual abuse, but a lot of them have, and they haven't gotten healing. And then what happens is there used to be more men who were the therapists, we'll say, who did, and for a female to go to a man who you would associate as the abuser was real hard. And so healing needs to be on everybody's head. I need to get healed. Then my question would be, what needs healing? Are your thoughts? Your feelings? Are those the same thing? Memories? Is that a thought? How do we heal a memory? How do we get new thoughts? What is forgiveness? for myself. Maybe my father that did it. What does that do to the memories? What does that do for my healing? And a lot of times, it's really not defined clearly, what healing is for people. And so they don't know the steps that they need to take to get there. Like if you were told, you came to a therapist and you said, I was sexually abused as a child, and you say, okay, here are the steps. Step number 1, we got to do some memory work and remember. Step number 2 is we got to forgive the abuser. Step number 3 is we got to help our body to know what's normal. Number 4 is this. And there's really no, therapists don't think like that, okay? They kind of just go with the flow, whatever you want to talk about, or not talk about, they just kind of just easygoing people, sort of. And, you only get 50 minutes. And, they just, a lot of people do not have any certifications or really don't really care about sexual assault victims. They want to help people, but, their expertise is something else. A lot of them have never sat in on rape crisis calls, never been in the hospital with somebody that's been raped, child that's been abused. They've never been a guardian ad litem with, and been around the grandparents, the children, been in the law, the courtroom with family court. They know nothing about what goes on with children in family court. They're not a victim's advocate in any way. They're not a sexual response advocate. They don't volunteer with any of that, but yet they put themselves out, that way. Now, people that work with children, there might be some certifications, to help them go through it. But when you're an adult, you would want to ask some questions about the therapist, what certifications they've gotten in sexual abuse training and that kind of thing, and have they volunteered? And I used to go, and I was a guardian ad litem for 2 years. I was the eyes and ears for a judge. I sat in the family courtroom. The stuff I had to study is not pretty. It's what you guys went through. I was a state victims advocate for people of crime, working with attorney generals. Then you have other areas of sexual assault in Florida. To be an advocate, you had to have a hotline, crisis line work. You had to have your fingerprints checked out, and you had to be able to pass some questions, get certified, just to get on a team that worked with the military and everybody else. There's a lot of other volunteer things that, that to help adults with sexual assault. I volunteered with the LGBTQI organizations, all kinds of things. And then there's the domestic violence part of that, and so a lot of your therapists do not do any of that kind of work. I actually went through the classes the state puts on to adopt children. I wasn't planning on adopting any, but I wanted to see and learn about the children who are going up for adoption. And you hear and you learn about their abuses, rough stuff. And but I knew I had to learn, okay? And then, you volunteer. And so mental health deals with your thinking processes, deals with your ideas, your feelings, your memories. And it's all stored in your biological brain in neurochemical, electrical stuff. Now, where is a memory stored when you're just sitting around doing nothing? It's in one of them neurons, probably in a form of light. And when something triggers it, which is a thought or the five senses, it gets released through the axons and stuff, and it flows through something flashes, if you've ever seen that kind of thing, and there's the memory. And then it disappears. And it goes into, just kind of comes and like turning a light switch on. And a lot of that is not studied in mental health counseling. And so a lot of the therapists really, they're not there with that. So any other questions from Philip or Annie?
How long have you been a mental health coach for?
Okay. I started doing, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's all. That was my question.
Okay. I started helping people probably back in high school. That's back in the 60s. Volunteered in drug treatment programs, which was different. I got my master's. I graduated from Troy State University at Knoxville Air Force Base with all Air Force officers from all over the world with my master's. In 1976, worked in a state juvenile detention center with hardcore juvenile prisoners. That was eye-opener. Went to the state mental institution, which with mentally ill people, volunteered in that. Came to Florida, was a substitute teacher, got on with the local community mental health center and drug rehab, did inpatient testing, worked with juveniles, adults, went into the jails. And then about down here in Florida, about 1980, let me think here, maybe 82, 81, a lot of male master's level counselors wanted to be able to diagnose and get paid by third-party insurance. Well, they had to be licensed. So a group of people started working with the legislators to pass the Florida law. They put it in the Medical Quality Assurance Department. So I came back to Florida in about 1985. No. 85, and I'd already had my 2 years. I'd already been working in a mental health center, so I got the psychologist. He supervised me, was just how it was, so I got that. Then I had to take the state test. It took me 2 or 3 times because I'd miss it by 1 or 2 questions. Cost a lot of money. But what was happening back in about 1985 is that the mental health center here, they wouldn't even hire you unless you were licensed. They would get you out of college with a master's, but you had to be supervised because they had to have credentials, and a lot of the credentialing groups for the mental health center was from the medical division in the state, because we were dealing with medical people and medical issues. And so they started saying, well, if you want to see clients, you have to have your license. So the master's level people quickly were getting all that done. And then I got hired in a rehabilitation center. I think I got my license in maybe 85. Worked there for a year or more with spinal cord injuries, head injuries, inpatient, cancer, everything, working with a team, a physiatrist, working with trauma victims, and at the same time volunteering with hospice and volunteering with child advocacy. So I was doing multiple things. So then I did that for about 10 years. And then I was directed by God to put my license down and learn how to help people His way. So I did it for about 10 years. And during that time, when I first got it, I was actually a part of the National American Mental Health Counselors Association, which was under the American Counseling Association. I was on 3 different committees. One was National Public Policy and Legislation. I traveled to Washington, D.C. I lobbied the senators and congressmen about licensing. I sat on I was the chair of the nominations committee for officers. Then I sat with a college professor from Troy on the National Public Policy National Standards Committee, where I helped write national standards for college universities while I was working a full-time job and raising a son and married. And then I was the local District 1 here in Florida's mental health counselor, which I would meet monthly with all the mental health counselors, fill them in on what was going on at the state level, the national level, and pass on information to them, held the meetings. And so I did all of that while working a job and volunteering, and learned a lot, met a lot of wonderful people. Was a big advocate for mental health counseling, had to understand education and everything. Went to a lot of meetings and board of directors meetings and traveled the United States for this mental health counseling. So I had a lot of experience, not only in the therapy classes. I did group therapy. I did support groups. I worked with adolescents. I worked with children. I worked with adults. I did IQ testing, that kind of thing. Worked with worked with people in residential. And then I didn't fit. I always wanted to pray with people and talk to them about God, and that didn't quite fit very well. So I put it down and then went after being a pastor and Bible college. Did it at home because I was working a full-time job and had to learn how to write sermons. I didn't do very good at that. And had to sit under one of our pastors at the church and that kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
Most definitely.
A lot of people work jobs, okay? They do. But I was always, if I was not working a full-time job, I was volunteering. And there were so many wonderful things in our community. And I wanted free training, so a lot of people, you need to get comfortable with people dying. And then when I was working to become a pastor, I actually paid money to go to our local Christian hospital here and take chaplaincy training to learn how to be a chaplain in a hospital. Spent the night in there once a week. Was in the emergency room right next to the nurses and everybody, and had to help people die, and had to help families let their family members die, and right there when doctors are trying to talk to them. And I had a lot of experiences most people didn't, and I also worked in the jails, gave the GED in the jail, was around prisoners and hardcore stuff most of my life. And then I came back to the jails as a teacher of the Bible, and so it's I've had so much, but a lot of it was all free training and volunteering, and some of it you had to volunteer for like 2 years. And like Sundays, and when I did hospice, I'd go spend Sunday night with a lady. She's in bed and dying, and so her aunt could go to church, and that's what I did. And then,
volunteering? Wait, can I ask you a question, please?
Do what?
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Am I interrupting?
I can't. Go ahead. You're outside or something.
Do you like volunteering or working for money more?
Do I like volunteering?
Or working for money more? Which one do you like more, working or volunteering?
I don't work for money anymore. I never liked making money helping people. I never did. Because there was something in me that said I'm not doing it for money. I for some reason, being brought up in the military, You didn't lay your life down on the line and go over, say, like World War II for money. You didn't go save people. You didn't go set nations free for money. It was we would call it a higher calling. It was something in you that said you're to help people, and you're not to make money off of that. But being a female and wanting to help people back in the 60s, there wasn't a lot. You were a school teacher. Well, my dad had 2 masters. He was an officer in the Air Force, and he taught for Troy State in the evening. He was an adjunct professor. So we were already sort of in psychology. We were in counseling, and but I didn't want to do the psychology because he had to have lab rats and I didn't like that. So I kind of stayed in the counseling, mental health part. And but I never did it for money. Okay, being a female, you know, I got married to a naval master chief, and I grew up where the female did not work. The husband took care of everything. We were equal, you know, we had our name on it, but the husband carried the financial burden. And but I always worked, but I didn't do it for money. Now, a lot of men, okay, master's level men do it for money, but it was hard because when you get that license, you now have a professional identity. You have a profession that you are a part of, a community. You have a title. You have responsibilities. You fit in with a little group of people. And then when I gave all that up, I didn't have any of that. And I tried to fit in the church world with the men, typically were men pastors. And I didn't do very well. It wasn't my part, it was their part. They didn't really like females coming into their world. And I was happened to get thrown in with witches, Satanists, hardcore occult stuff, deliverance work. And most of these pastors had never seen the things I saw. And the things I saw that people did, you would think they need to go to the state mental institution, but it was spiritual going on. So I never did I never had to call, you know, to make $1 million and overcharge. I was just content learning. There's a lot of wonderful volunteer just to learn how to help people in many different areas, and I felt obligated. If I was not working a job, I was to volunteer in the community to help make the community better. But believe it or not, there's a lot of women who want to have a professional identity, and they are not married, and they want to help people. And the only way they can do that is get their master's, get licensed, and go to work. And I was a little different because I was willing to lay it all down and just be a wife and then be a mother. But my husband was great about letting me volunteer, and so that was great. And you didn't live the rich life, you know, with one person working. And so I wasn't in it for the money, still not. I'm on YouTube all the time. I'm recording. I was ministering to a guy who's got some major issues sexually. Over on our comment section, I do it on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I don't charge for anything. I never have. But there's other people that is their, especially for some females, that is the only way money they have coming in. And for the man, it is different. He needs to work and support his family. And so I was just, I don't think I was just a normal person. And, you know, when I laid my license down, I lost my professional identity. I lost the community of peers that I was a part of. I didn't have that anymore. You can't really go to all the things and all the training and the things that you did with professionals. And I didn't fit in with the men in the church world because that's a closed area. So I kind of was all by myself and helping people. And so it was a little harder. And, didn't talk to a lot of people during the time. And because how do you talk to people about a lot of hardcore witchcraft, Satanism, occult? And a lot of people in the community that are in that. And a lot of things that other people don't know. And you just don't talk to people, but you have to do ministry with them. All of them had multiple personalities. All have been sexually abused as children. All had hardcore spiritual issues. I dealt with mafia people. I dealt with leaders from around the world. And hardcore stuff that, that would normal child sexual abuse couldn't even conceive of. And yet I had to be able to minister to them. Did it by phone, did it in person, did it on emails. And so I had to do a lot of studying, reading a lot of nasty books about events, true stories, watch a lot of movies. And I didn't charge anybody anything. Still don't. Does that answer your question, Philip?
Yeah, but I have to go in like 5 minutes because I'm going to an NA meeting.
Okay. Annie,
thanks
you there?
for coming on, Philip.
Thank you for having me.
I'm here, Pastor Deborah.
How are we doing on our time?
We have 37 minutes left.
Okay. Well,
I'll give out the phone number. If anyone wants to call and talk to Pastor Deborah, our phone number is 646-595-2118. Go ahead and give us a call. I'm the guy answering the phone tonight, so I'll welcome you on. And you can ask your question or make your comment or just tell us a little bit about your story. Again, the phone number is 646-595-2118. Thank you. Pastor?
I think a lot of people, Philip asked some really good questions, which I hope if somebody has been sexually abused and they're adult now, that when they go see a counselor, therapist or whatever, they ask them these questions like, what kind of training have you had? And, what are you certified in? And that kind of thing, because it does make a difference. And people don't realize it, but counselors are raised up in what you call schools. Some of them follow Freud, some of them follow Carl Rogers, some of them B.S. Skinner, some of them follow others. And they all follow a theory about how to help people get healed and what's important. And I can remember when I took guided imagery, we were to help you to kind of look back and help you get relaxed so you could talk. And then they were going to offer hypnosis, and I go, no, I'm not going there. I knew not to go there. And but other people got trained in hypnosis and trying to reach deep into the subconscious, We studied Freud. We studied all the different counseling theories, which there's a lot of them, on how to help people. And some people follow certain, of the books and things like that. And some people went off more in, we'll say, addiction, substance abuse, and they go there. And then other people just study adults. And but as we learned, 1 in 4 people got mental health issues. So it takes deep studying about, okay, why would somebody, is depression a biological thing? Yes. Can your chemistry get messed up? Yes. Can you get out of balance in all your chemicals in your body? Yes. Can your thoughts be out of control? Yes. Okay. And how do you get your thoughts back in control? Can your feelings get out of control? Yes. And, can memories come and invade your just normal day? Yes. And like I said, most counselors are not trained to deal with disassociation, multiple personalities. Most of them aren't trained to deal with child abuse victims. They maybe deal with depression or something, They have specialties. And that's kind of where they stay. A lot of times, if you're, say, a female and you're having some marital issues and you get with a therapist, maybe she's been divorced 2 times or 3 times and has no kids, and how is she going to help you understand what you're going through? Her life's a mess. And so, you run into that, and you run into men that take advantage. We were under ethics. You had to have ethic classes because it was seen that the therapist was in a position of power and authority and could take advantage of the patient, what they were called, and men had to leave the door open, and they really shouldn't close the door when they got a female in there, and the female shouldn't close the door when you got a male in there, and you can't touch, and there's ethical things going on. And some of the memories and stuff, and I've had my records subpoenaed by court, and I've had to go give depositions, about things. I was working with a parenting and a child, and, a lot of that's not even taught at your master's level. And there's when you get out, unless you're a member of your professional organization, you don't really get a lot. Well, what happens if you get called? Your records get called into court, and you have to go give depositions. And, so I had so many experiences and a lot of volunteering. I was just different than most of your therapists. And Philip even asked, did I just volunteer or did I charge money? I didn't. When you're in the business of a professional, you charge insurance. I think it was up to maybe $50 or $60 for 50 minutes, kind of standard. But the poor mental health counselors were always trying to get on every care provider list, getting on Medicare, getting on TRICARE, getting on this, getting on that. Then they would have where if you were working, they would pay for your work would pay for 3 counseling visits, and you wanted to be on that list. So there was a lot of chasing the money, a lot of trying to get on insurance rolls and things like that. And because most people, like to see a psychiatrist, you might pay $180. And a lot of them, they're not going to take a credit card or insurance. They want the $180 cash. And a lot of master's people started doing the same thing. We only take credit cards or cash. They're not even going to file for insurance because insurance is only going to pay 80% of it. And then the client gets a copay of 20%. Gets really expensive because somebody is living off of you having issues, having your problems. They have a life off of you, So it's not. I didn't like it, so I enjoy much more now being a minister. Like I ministered on the comment section on my YouTube page. Some guy's got some major sexual issues, and he wants to know what to do, and we comment back and forth, and I've done it on LinkedIn. I've done deliverance prayers on LinkedIn. You can do it anywhere, and I don't ask anybody for any money. So, any question, Annie, you want to ask me?
I was just going to say you remind me of a nun. My auntie was a nun, and she was an RN. She didn't get any money. She did the work, and I don't know if there was payment. I don't know how it worked, but she didn't get paid for her work, and that was her giving to God.
Yeah,
and
it
so
is different. It's if you're a female, okay. I was brought up, basically the female didn't work. But she could be live a very, she didn't need to provide the financial part. In the military, it worked this way. When you are an officer, he's getting paid. The wife, that was my mom, you volunteered on the base at the Child Development Center, in the hospital. I also did that. Okay? But the husband, would get orders, and every 2 years you move. So the wife, as an officer, you weren't expected to work a job. You were to be educated, have a college degree, go to the officers' club. You had to know how to dance. You had to know how to play bridge and cards and go to cocktail parties and meet with the bigwigs. And so I had different life experiences. My parents never divorced. And my dad had, like I said, 2 masters in counseling, was a college professor. So I had that level of community volunteering. I lived on military bases. I am not comfortable in the community like everybody else. I wasn't into sports, didn't play it, but I knew to volunteer, and that was your obligation to society. And at the same time, you were in the military. You were a federal employee, and you would travel to protect the country. And your life was different. Your life's, what was placed into you was, you may have to go die to set somebody free. You will lay down your life for others. You did it out of patriotism or out of love. And so I had a different foundation in me. It wasn't for money, because my father didn't get paid very much back then. And everything you did was, my father taught college, you volunteer, you help society, you help nations, you help people, not for money, not for prestige. So I had a little different, it wasn't a job. And then, I tried to do the counseling in a church. That didn't work out. And it was a Friday night back in 1990, I think. No, 95. And then God asked me, he said, okay, that didn't work out. I closed that door. Now what you going to do? Are you coming after me, or are you mad and angry going to walk out that door? I said, sir, I'm coming after you. And once I made that decision, I had no job, no money, no identity, no professional people to be around, no community, as you would call it, I was all alone. But I went after God at this church, the Brownsville Revival, back in 1995. And God opened the door to help people His way, which was spiritually. But yet He's not wasting, the mental health part. And so I'm able to talk about that. And then He threw me right in the deep end of the swimming pool with some of the most spiritually bad stuff I've ever heard. You wouldn't even believe it, that it existed. And I had to swim with Him, and I did, and I read books. I'd read 6 or 8 books at one time, watch a lot of videos, read the Bible, watch over and over the movies and stuff. And then I had personal contact, brought them in my home, saw them in church, saw them at work. And God was beginning to show me the multiple personalities and the disassociation. And I didn't talk to anybody. Who could you talk to? The pastors, they didn't even believe in this stuff. And mental health didn't believe in it. And so I kind of was alone, which was okay. Now the thing is, people do need to get healed, and it is there. And there's many different levels of healing, probably many different areas that need to be healed. And there's many different steps that people need to take. And Annie, I think you said one of them was your peer-to-peer and telling your story.
Yes, to me that was very helpful.
And the thing is, a lot of people don't even want to get there, and that's okay. Because, some people's healing is, if it's, we're going to say from the spiritual side, God is directing it. Some people never go to counselors, but they get healed. Some people never tell their story, but God heals them. Some people, take care of business behind the closed doors with them and God. Some people go to counseling. They don't talk too much, but they get healed. And then other people do like you did, peer-to-peer. And so if you let God sort of direct you, He knows how to get a person healed. And what I like about with God is He's with you all the time. He can heal you in your dreams. And He can heal you and direct you and guide you, and you don't even know it. And next thing you know, some memory you used to have isn't there anymore. And then other people, He wants them to go to therapy. Why? I don't know. Other people need to be in the hospital or be on medication for a while. So He works with each one of us differently, what I learned. And He doesn't discount the mental health community at all. They're very important. Or peer-to-peer support groups or AA or anything, and all the life coaches, Everybody's trying to help everybody, and He's for that. And so mine was just it was a strange walk. It was unique, but I'm still here, and still helping people. Do you need to do any advertising, Annie?
I'm sorry?
Do you need to do any advertising of Naasca?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. We still have, we have 22 more minutes. So let me do station identification. This is Stop Child Abuse Now radio show number 3187, brought to you by the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse, Naasca. And you can learn more about Naasca at their website, naasca.org. And please call us with your questions and comments or just to talk. And our phone number is 646-595-2118. I'll repeat that, 646-595-2118. Give us a call, and I'll be the one who answers the phone. Okay, back to you, Pastor Deborah.
Okay. For a person to be healed, there's many areas, okay, that need to be. Somebody's emotions. Well, our emotions. Our thoughts, what are they? Our memories, what are they? Some people talk about how the body holds the memories. Is that true? Okay. A lot of your people who need healing are very uneducated about therapy, uneducated about the many different areas that need to be healed. And a lot of therapists don't, they don't have time, It's like going to your primary care doctor. We got a few minutes, and that's it, and I get paid. And maybe your first time they say, yeah, okay, and you might start off, well, I'm depressed, and you find out other things. And then people are also restricted by their insurance. Some insurance companies don't pay but for maybe 3 visits to a licensed counselor. Some don't pay at all, and so you have to pay out of pocket. Some don't like being asked very personal questions. And, most people are working a full-time job or going to school. They don't have time to do 50 minutes, and you have to drive there. And their insurance may not cover it. And so they just say, hey, I suck it up, and I got to work. I got to go to school. I have a job. And That's just the way it is. So, they kind of put along, and they'll get triggered, and, certain things will trigger them, and they might relapse, and they might end up in the hospital, and they don't have who they work for doesn't pay for therapy. Some people need to be in it probably for years, okay? And they can't afford it. And, they got family to raise up, and they got just tons of other issues. So, healing gets put on the wayside. And that kind of thing. So they just don't get healed. But that's what I like about God. He can heal you in your dreams while you're sleeping. You can deal with your thoughts, your memories. And if you have some really good ministers around, then they can do work on Zoom. They can do it on the phone. Like today, I was doing it with this young guy. He saw a video, and we have been messaging, and his name is Chris. And some of it's not, he has a language that might offend a lot of therapists, and but he's struggling with sexual issues, and so my job is to listen, and then he asks me questions, and I'm messaging him back, and doing work. And so social media can provide a wonderful outlet, and I think a lot of people have through life coaching, through videos, through advertising, Zoom conferences, and they got all kinds of things going on LinkedIn, posting different stuff happening, and there's YouTube channels, and there's all kinds of conferences, and it's different now because we'll call them clients is what they're called. Didn't really have that years ago. And you didn't have you just had individual therapy. The group therapy was mainly grief support maybe, or something like AA for alcohol. Peer support's kind of new to the world. So most people, it was always one-on-one, with a therapist or a social worker. Some pastors, would do it, but they didn't have a lot of training. And so a lot of people just say, I don't have the money, I don't have the insurance, I don't have the time. I'll just go see a psychiatrist and take some medication for depression or something like that. Because I have to work, I've got a family, and just, my insurance won't cover it. So, and most of the time your pastors, they don't charge anything. A lot of them are not educated or trained in it either. So I was just a little different. Any questions from you, Annie?
No, I can't think of one right. Oh, yeah, I do have one. I wrote it down. I'm so sorry. This is what I wrote down, that you said volunteering was a woman's social obligation. And I was raised that way. And when I was married, I had a compulsion to volunteer and not work. It was like I couldn't work for money. I had to work for free. And after being a single person and working, being the only person paying bills, when I had to quit doing that, somebody offered me a part-time job, and I said, well, I'll just volunteer to do it for you. You don't have to pay me.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
Well, it's really not. Our generation, it was brought up a little different, okay? And the women basically, they raised the children. They were there after when they came home from school. They cooked the meals, did the shopping, cleaned the house. And that job was respected by the husbands and society. And some of them became school teachers, nuns, nurses. And a lot of them didn't have children. and the man was the financial, we'll call him the breadwinner. Now, in the military, this was, I was born right during the Korean War. It was male-dominated, but the officers were to be married, and your wife was to be educated. But we lived on base, and you're going to leave. You're not going to be a part of the community, and you are to volunteer on the base. And because you travel around, you can't really work. Officers' lives were much different than enlisted, and that kind of thing, because the requirements and expectations of officers. So I grew up in that. You are to help society, and the man had a role, and the woman had a role. And the man went out and left the job, and he's going to be fighting out there with the lions and the wolves to bring home the meat. Okay, he's got to go kill the wildebeest, sort of. The wife stays home with grandma and grandpa and does the cooking. And both jobs were respected. Both jobs were needed. The wife was honored. But slowly what started happening was divorce started happening, and the women, they lost their identity, and they lost their respect from the men and from other women for just staying at home and not working. So I grew up working. Okay, I worked. We all did, ice cream stores, all kinds of stuff. But that was not my goal. And women have a tendency to friends and be kind, not for money. Most men will do that in connection with, I'm doing this to build my identity in the community, make connections socially, so I'll make deals and, and get promoted and stuff. So their reason for helping people is different. So I grew up in that, and I knew the obligations was to help people. And okay, so you didn't work, you're college educated. Even during my college years, I volunteered, trained in things, worked, volunteered, helped people. And what happened was, now you didn't live like on the military. Even back then, the officers lived on base. You didn't have a lot of stuff. You lived in your means. And you just were not into all the stuff that the community was, so you didn't spend money on sports and all that stuff. Dad wore a uniform. You didn't buy all the clothes. You didn't do all that stuff. So the life was different. So my background and my thing about helping people was, you're not doing this for money. Okay? You're doing it calling. And that was, a little different. So, but a man now, he should be the breadwinner, supporting his family and taking care of things. But he can volunteer, but it gets under why you're volunteering. Some of the best volunteers used to be like you were you volunteered with the Boy Scouts. That ain't going to help you much, So, but that's how I got all this unique, free experience and knowledge, which most counselors did not get. And my husband was very good about, hey, okay, you're going to somebody's house every Sunday night. Okay, and then when I worked in the hospital, spent the night, my husband has to watch the child, and I'm traveling all over the United States on these for the American Mental Health Counselors. Husband is doing babysitting work. Okay, so, there was we had a wonderful understanding, because he was a master chief, and he had to do a lot of volunteering and work in the Navy. You had sports, what did they have? did a lot with the young enlisted people and stuff. So, and of course you have your Master Chief banquets and things you have to go to. But he volunteered like with the fishing clubs and things like that. So we were both volunteering, and we were out, in the community for free. So that was I didn't do it for money, and still don't. So healing, is going to mean many things to many people. And it will take, I tell people, you got to get under a master. You got to get up with a teacher. You got to get with somebody that can say, okay, you're at this stage, like we'll say kindergarten, or you're in the 6th grade. You're at this level, and these are the different areas of your thinking. Your body's healed, okay? Your physical body's healed, but maybe your chemistry's thrown off, your thoughts, your memories. You're still disassociated. They may not even know they have an inner child, or they have disassociation. They may not know that. And so they may not know that. They may not know they lose time, or that even have the memories of the abuse or anything. So it takes somebody that's uniquely trained that can slowly help them through it. And the different areas, in spirituality, you got a spirit, and it has issues in your soul, which is your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings, your images, your desires, your short-term, long-term memory, your biological brain, which is connected to your body, and everything needs help. So, Annie, it is 8:22. I don't know if you want to finish us up or ask a couple more questions. Are you there, Miss Annie?
I was talking away. I'm sorry. We have 7 minutes left, and I have a question for you, Pastor.
Okay.
Okay. The educational standards for the colleges that teach counseling, who's in charge of that? Because I want to write a letter and say you need to be teaching about child abuse.
Okay. Typically, you will go in any university, there's 2 levels. One, the School of Social Work. In there, that's where your social workers go. Then you have the psychology department. And you also might have the counseling department. And what happens is a lot of the social workers have been around for 100 years or more, and they have different tracks, and their people might decide, I'm going to work with children who are abused. They take the children's track. Then there's a clinical track where they end up working with psychiatrists, so that's more medical. Then there's ones who work in hospitals. So they have different tracks. Then in just the counseling, it would be the master's level psychology, counseling, something like that. And typically, the director of those programs decides, based on the state they're in, what courses they have to have in order to graduate from the university, which is also connected to the national boards of licensed professional counselors, American Mental Health Counselors Association, that the Medicare and the other insurance companies, so there's a lot involved, okay? But then the person can decide they want to work with children, okay? And in their coursework, they take more classes with child development or how to do play therapy. But an adult, they get basic, Freud stuff with depression and all the drugs and things like that. And they, you have group therapy and that kind of thing. So it's interesting. And I just, it's good to have, but a lot of those people that, believe it or not, Annie, a lot of counselors have been abused themselves.
Oh, I'm sure,
yet,
and that probably draws them to the career, maybe.
Yes, because they're trying to heal themselves, but they haven't been through therapy. One of the things, you used to hear about psychiatrists is you're going to go through psychoanalysis yourself before you get out there trying to help people. Okay?
Do they make them do that at the school?
Yeah, I don't know. They used to.
Oh.
Okay. Because they knew you got your own issues. And a lot of people go in to help people, but they're trying to help themselves. Okay? But they don't want to tell anybody. So they go just to take the classes to try to help somebody else so they can help. You got a lot of people that have child abuse issues. I mean, you got people
1 out of 4, right?
Well, that's mental health, but you can have people that had child abuse, and then they form a multiple personality, and one goes to college and becomes of that, and then at nighttime there's somebody else.
Yeah.
So, all right, you got 3 minutes.
3 minutes left. Okay, well, let me wrap up by thanking Pastor Deborah for coming tonight. She comes once a month on a Thursday night. Which Thursday do you come?
The 4th Thursday of every month, and this is the 4th Thursday.
All right, the 4th Thursday. You can hear Pastor Deborah on this radio station.
No, the 4th Tuesday. I'm sorry. The 4th Tuesday.
I'm sorry, too. Okay, the 4th Tuesday of the month, Pastor Deborah will be here. And every Tuesday and Thursday, we have a survivor professional, which means someone who has survived child abuse who is in a professional field to help survivors. And I'm sorry, someone just interrupted me. This has been Scam Radio. Stop Child Abuse Now. That's what the initials are. Brought to you by Naasca.org. That's the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. And they have a great website, Naasca.org. And I will sign off. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back another night. Bye.
I'll know tomorrow, 'cause that dawn will